Hang on. Welcome to another G4 Guitar Teacher Hangout. My name is David Hart, and today we're going to be doing our standard format. I've got Ben here from Wollongong in New South Wales, Australia, and we're just going to have a bit of a chat and see what we can do, what problems we can solve, what ideas we can come up with, and yeah, hopefully we'll solve a few of your problems as well. Ben, have you got any questions, any topics that you want to cover today?
I would say intro to subscription, intro to group conversions is something probably always helps to go over again, and
yep.
And probably also inquiries as well, just from email inquiries over to actually speaking to the people. I mean, it's a strange one, but it's people aren't, they send you the initial inquiry via email or whatever, and then fail to give you any contact details. And I'm just trying to work out what's happening there.
Okay, now I'm just getting email to paying student. Okay, cool. So all right, we'll tackle those, and then yeah, if you've got any other questions or anything you want to talk about, I've got a topic too that I wouldn't mind throwing up here, which I think is one of those things we don't talk about a lot, which is cash flow and understanding that side of the business and how it works in thinking from the point of view of an entrepreneur and building your income, not just from the point of view of you making money, but also from the point of view of your business being profitable. The more profitable your business, the more you can do for your students. And we can have a look at the internet, for example, and things like Google. If Google wasn't highly profitable, they wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that they do, which is provide a great service in their search. YouTube, which is free for all of us to use. They wouldn't be able to provide these services if they weren't profitable and if they weren't highly profitable. And that's why it's not just about making money for yourself, it's about making money for your students, your community, whoever's involved, whoever is on the recipient end of your business. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, and why it's important to understand cash flow and how it you can build your business and build your income from there. So number one, intro to conversion. So what you're saying is when you got a student who starts, just for anyone watching this, they start off by doing the 5-week intro, and then you're kind of wanting to know what's the best way to get them to ensure, let's say, to take it from a 50% chance of them enrolling to a 90 or a 95% chance of them enrolling into your group lessons. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Currently, going over since I've started the business, it's averaging around 70%.
Okay, cool, good. Well, that's good.
Since it started in essentially from February, March. So
great.
It's increasing, but there's it seems to go through phases, and I'm wondering whether it's something I'm doing or just want to cross-check. Okay,
cool. And look, I guess there's seasonal things. There may be some things that you're doing or not doing, and it's definitely worth looking at. So maybe if we just go through some of the important things first, and then if something comes to mind through our conversation, which often happens, then you can raise that up. So one of the things that I find, one of the main reasons people don't convert from the intro to the group, which I don't think it will be your case, but I'll just put it out there anyway, in that is the connection between I'm not just talking about the personal connection between you and your student, but also the connection between your student's goals, what they want, and what G4 is all about. And that's one of the first things I found when I used to walk into lessons and watch other teachers in action, or come in towards the end of an intro, and especially with teachers who were losing students, I would see that the student was looking a bit confused, was looking a bit like, what's this got to do with me wanting to play my favorite songs? That they don't make the connection, and they haven't really spend enough time in that 5 weeks, really making sure that everything that's being taught has an end game to where that student wants to go. And the question of how to do that, and I should say also that there's never a point where you're going to perfect this. It's a bit like music itself. You're never going to be perfect. What's happening is you're just getting better and better at the skills around it, because it's communication, and everybody's different. Everybody is very complex, and people change. They go up and down in moods and priorities, and so you might have them really in the first couple of weeks, and then maybe in the 4th week the boyfriend or girlfriend leaves them. They're emotionally heartbroken, and they can't think of anything else, and here you are trying to get them to want to join one of your groups. So there are things that happen that are out of your control, but most things can be worked. And if you have the plan, the 5-week plan, and you stick to it, you can generally get most people to go at least to the first stage of the group. Whether they last or not, that's another topic. But what I found is that, and what I was seeing was with the teachers who weren't getting these conversion rates from intro to group, is that they were not talking about the students' goals. They were just talking about the method. They were talking about the practice, what to do, this and that and the other, which is fine, which is important. But once you lose touch with the student and what they're there for, then they will. It's like any relationship. If it's all about you, then the other person will soon disappear. You've got to make it about them, and you have your agenda of what needs to be taught, but you have to make it about them. It has to look like it's important to them. That's the first place I would look. If anything comes up, Ben, just feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think so.
Sure, you go. Yep.
Yeah, so the new format of the G4, the method that you've got, and you've got that small questionnaire at the beginning of the book, is brilliant. Yep. I've had some new students that I've put onto that now, and instantly, as soon as they come back after that first week, I'm able to. They've written down some stuff for me, and that way I'm able to get additional insight into what's making them tick, and that's great, because I can really leverage off that as well. So
yeah,
that's great. That's really
good.
With that additional connection.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to get that feedback too. Thank you, because it makes a big difference if we know it's working, because it's and I know there are probably a few teachers who aren't using it, and they probably don't realize the power of it, because they're not using it. They haven't really seen how powerful it can be. So that's good. It's an endorsement from you, and you're in the front line. So because the inspiration for a lot of the G4 material comes from not just me, but other teachers who are doing something that's working. So we look at, okay, well, that's working for you. What are you doing, so to speak, that's working? And then we go, or it might be something that they're doing that's not necessarily systemized or even on a piece of paper. It could be that they're the questions that, and some of that, I will say, are questions that I would ask students and clarify in my own mind the answers to those questions. And I used to keep notes, so I would write down the notes based on what the student would answer. But now we've got a system for it, so yeah, we're really making a closer connection to those students.
Yeah, great. I think
cool. Yeah.
I've just read a book called The Practicing Mind, which I thought was great with the way that it spoke about sort of embracing just the process of practice, and more than feeling anxious about the end result. And that's something that's made a big connection with me, and that's something I feel that it's going to take some time to communicate to the student, and that sort of that expectation that they have at the end of the 5 weeks, or see that how long it's going to take for them to get to their goals or whatever, is something that is maybe something that's throwing them off as well. So they feel overwhelmed, and they feel like that it's it's not going to be something that they can commit to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a brilliant book. Here's the piano guy, right? Piano tuner.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, and he's I just love the way he spoke about, when he was tuning pianos, how he got right into the process of tuning it, not thinking about, I have to get this piano tuned, by 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think and what it did, as he said, is it made him a much better piano tuner, because he loved the process of tuning it rather than the end result all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same with your teaching, with your business. If you're thinking, I have to earn this much money, I have to get here. It's good to have goals. Goals are important, but if you don't enjoy the process, if you're always anxious or frustrated, then the odds are you're going to either quit or you're going to cut corners, and you're going to spend a lot of time being miserable. That's the bottom line, So I think that, it's really important to enjoy the process of practice, and that's what you're saying now. And if you can get this across to students, and that's why I use that term lifestyle. Guitar is a lifestyle. That it's not, because you're going to spend, I would say this to students, you're going to spend 90% of your time practicing. 10% you're going to be performing, whatever it is, playing songs and on stage, whatever. But if you want to keep improving, and really get the most out of guitar, you're going to spend most of your time practicing. So if you can enjoy the practice, and I say this to students, and I'm quite honest about it, I actually enjoy the practice more than I do the performance these days. Weird, because it was the other way around when I was a teen in my early 20s. I didn't want to practice. I just wanted to be able to play and get on stage and perform. But yeah, it's the practice that I enjoy most. There's something about it that, you're kind of working on things and developing it and getting a little bit better. It's just, it's the intrinsic rewards of practice. So.
Yeah, I think because obviously with the spreadsheets and that, you look back through past students, and I always get the comment of the reasons why they've left, specific, especially after that 5 weeks, and a lot of and majority of the reasons are from having the time to practice.
Yeah, and the excuse of not having time to practice is the same as any excuse about time. It's not that you don't have the time. It's just that you're not motivated. It's not important enough to you to make the time. So and which comes down to the fact that they probably don't like it. They probably don't like doing the practice, so they're not motivated to do it. Therefore, they come up with the excuse of, I don't have time. Because and I think the internet and Facebook and I've spoken about this many times, but these are really have revealed the true nature of people, and that is that if the average person spends 5 hours of screen time a day, and I'm talking between TV and internet, doing things, and 5 hours a day doing entertaining type things. In other words, nothing that's productive, just surfing casual websites, or looking at silly pictures of cats, or watching pointless TV shows, whatever it happens to be. 5 hours a day is the average person, right? If the average person's got that 5 hours a day, then you know that everybody out there is probably spending at least an hour a day, like a minimum. I'm talking about even the most organized person, most diligent person is probably still spending an hour a day, and you got to spend a bit of time. I'm not talking about you spend all your time being productive. Sometimes you just want to chill, and that's important. But everybody has the time to find that 30 minutes a day to do the guitar practice if they really want to play guitar. It's not impossible. So.
Okay. Try to explain it to them that.
yeah, that's right. Try and get that through. So, and that's the point here of this topic, is what we want to find out. Okay, how do we get students to think in the right way, so that they don't drop out after 5 weeks? And I think there are a couple of things that we may not have discussed a lot. And one of the things that I think that needs attention is not letting students feel that just because they're having trouble and they're not motivated and they're having, that they're not meant to play guitar. It's like everybody goes through these struggles, and I would tell my students that in the first year I was always juggling. The first 2 years, really, I was really deciding, do I really want to do guitar? Is it really worth it? I'm not very good, and I seem to practice and not get much better. So I had, I explained to them, I had the same doubts that you have right now. And it's just a period of learning that you go through. I'm learning Japanese right now. And it's the same thing, all this effort to be able to speak it, is it worth it? And that's what you ask yourself. You keep coming about, well, at the end of the day, when I can speak good Japanese, what am I going to do with it anyway? Most of them can speak a bit of English, so, is it really worth it? So and that's what students do as well, is they start thinking, is it really worth it? So I guess we've got to stack it in their favor to say, yeah, it is worth it. It's really worth it. Here's why. Here are some of the reasons why. Go back to why you wanted to do it. What got you here in the first place?
Yeah,
I think is a good one.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay, cool. So just to sort of finish off on that, the only other thing I would say about the intro and conversions at this point is to go through all the possible things that you think that the reasons that you've had students drop out in the past, and really look for those signs early. If you can start to see patterns, I think one of the differences that comes with experience, obviously, and you already got quite a bit of experience, so you would start to see the signs, certain signs anyway, of where you can see a student who's starting to waver. That the confidence is not there, or the motivation's a little bit down, the excuses are starting to slip in, and you know what I'm saying? Those little early signs, yeah.
And from the parents as well, if they're younger students, that if the parents if it's a hassle for them to be coming in each week and they're trying to reschedule and all that sort of thing as well, there's certainly certain signs. Definitely see something early, that's for sure.
Yeah, and just touching base with the parents and telling them how their child is doing, what they're doing, it makes a huge difference. Just, I know it makes a difference for me when, with my daughter, if I take her somewhere and the teacher or at school, wherever she's doing something, if the teacher comes up to me and gives me a few words about how she's going and some positive encouragement, then I feel better. I feel, okay. I feel like this teacher cares about my daughter, and therefore I care more about what she's doing as well. So,
I think kind of thinking back on it, I think it's some of the times it's just either just the mother that's coming in, and you get a feeling there's not the support from both sides of the parents as well. So
yeah. And that's where, sometimes I was probably a little bit bold, whenever I felt, because I didn't like losing students. That was the worst thing for me. I didn't want to lose a student. So when I felt that there was a bit of, and I know you're saying you've got two parents, and one parent is sort of bringing the child to the lesson, and then the other parent you never see, or, in the few times that the other parent gets mentioned, there's this, you just pick up the vibe that the other parent is not really interested in this, and maybe even disapproves of it sometimes, that, they'd rather their child be doing something else. So I knew that in order to change that kind of mindset, I had to get somehow in contact with them. So I would sometimes, say to the parent, and even when I enrolled them, I would ask, if there's a mother enrolling, I would say, so is your husband going to be bringing such and such to the lessons? If they say no, whatever, I would say, is it okay if I can get both your contact numbers, just so I've got them on file? And then that way I'd have them both on file, and then I would find a reason to ring the father and just introduce myself. There are occasions I remember and I can give an exact example. One of my students, his father was quite well known in Sydney. He worked for one of the major TV stations, was the news anchor. And so he's a very busy man, very nice guy, but very, very busy guy. So he just didn't come to any of the lessons. There was always the mother that brought him. But the son was getting a little bit sort of losing confidence. And this is a bit of a switch, as you'll see. And anyway, I'd asked the mother a couple of times, is there any chance that the father could come in you know, just have a look how his son's going, and I can just introduce him. And he said, oh, he's really busy, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about, you know, a nightly prime time news anchor here. So obviously his time is pretty busy. But it ended up that I saw him and his son on the street one day. So I went up to him and said, hi, I'm, you know, Johnny's guitar teacher, David. And, oh, hi, how are you? And yeah, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then I made the point of saying a few very positive things in front of his father about his guitar playing. And the body language on the boy, who was about 8, and his attitude from there on just changed dramatically, because now I had praised him in front of his father, who was his hero. And to do that kind of thing. So can you see what I'm saying? It's not just about getting to the father and getting the support of the father. It's about praising the child in front of the father, so that the child feels, now my father, you know, here's someone who's you know, made me look good in front of my own hero, who's my dad. So
yep, that's great.
So all those kind of things, and you know, I talk about the family circle, bring in people, you know, not just mum and dad. It could be anyone. It could be grandma. It could be you know, Auntie May, whoever is important to this child in their life. The more you can kind of, without going to extremes, of course, but just involve them somehow, even on a small scale. You know, it could be like, well, what song does Auntie May like? Maybe we can learn a song for her, and then you can play that for her next week. And those kind of things really, yeah, make a difference.
The more that I think about it, probably I would say 90% or the majority of the reasons why they haven't continued is because I've only had contact or relationship with one side of the parent. Yeah, yeah. And it's, you know, it's one of the reasons that, and this is not a racist call at all. It's, my wife's Japanese, and I'm just talking about the different ways, and I'm not saying that every, you know, Asian person is like this and every, you know, non-Asian person is like that. But basically, culturally within, you know, Japan and China and those kind of countries, the mothers especially come, and even some of the fathers come to every lesson, and they like to sit in on every lesson and watch every lesson. They like to be very much a part of their child's education. It's a big deal for them. We're, you know, in Australia anyway, we're a lot more sort of laid back in that respect. We hand our kids over to the teachers and sort of leave it to them. So what I found, though, was that the reason that a lot of the Asian children did so well in their lessons, anyway, I'm not talking outside of that, but just in their lessons, was simply because the parent was there at the lesson and the parent was at home helping them with the practice all the time. So it was something that I just witnessed through my own teaching, and it's a cultural thing. And as I say, it's not to do with race. It's a culture. It's just the way that they've been brought up and the way that they view their role as a parent. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the second thing there, which is to email, from email to paying student. And what happens sometimes with email is that I don't know why, it's a strange phenomenon, but people who seem to fill out an email have a very short memory. They'll even say that I don't remember doing that, and so forth. And with the emails that you're getting, they have to confirm that email. So it's not like they just fill in the email and suddenly they're on your list, unless they come to you directly via an email to your email address. But when they come through the subscription form, then they have to actually confirm that subscription form. You know, on your email, you might get an email from someone, but again, if you reply straight to that email, obviously it's going back to the person who sent it, you would assume, because of the way email works. So I think one of the problems with email is that we do have this kind of filter, and I've read about these kind of things where we have this filter where we don't feel as connected to the internet as we would a real person that we see or even talk to on the phone. We feel a higher level of commitment to. And when I say commitment, we feel that if we say something to that person
or we make some kind of promise or agreement that we need to live up to it. And the example that they give in the studies that I've read anyway is just to sort of point it out is road rage. People, when they get behind a wheel, and sometimes we're talking about people who are not the kind of people who are confrontational, get them behind a wheel, and next thing you know, they're screaming profanities at every second person and sticking their finger up, and they turn into some crazy, Jekyll and Hyde, and that's because they're behind the safety of their machine and their wheel, and they don't feel, they're going to be. But if they walked along the street and did that to people, we'd lock them up. We put them in an insane asylum. You just walked across my feet, smack them in the head. What are you doing? It'd just be a crazy world. So I think there's an element of that in email communication, and we again, we can look at the examples of people who troll the internet and the kind of things that people say, which are just sometimes completely, unbelievable. But they do it because they feel that they're in the safety of being anonymous. It's that anonymous element. While I'm anonymous, then I don't really have to be accountable to anything. And, the normal rules no longer apply, the normal social rules, because we do have this social interaction. But anyway, that kind of explains why it happens. And I think you do have to lower your expectations around it. So when you get an email, don't get excited about it. Someone says, I'm interested in your guitar lessons, blah, 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 by email. The standard emails we go back, that's really send the standard email back. If it doesn't work, then you can try sending them a different email. But by the time you send your third email, you're a stalker. It's time to stop.
Exactly. At what point essentially each time you're rewording the original email, aren't you? Just putting it.
You are. They're not wanting to respond to you anyway in that sense. But there is something that you can do, which is, and it's completely legal. It's completely above board, and basically you can collect those email addresses and put them into a Facebook marketing campaign. And I'm running a campaign for you. We can add those to what we call an audience, and and what will happen is if they're on Facebook registered under that email address, then we can put ads in front of them. So you're kind of stalking them with ads, but it's completely above board, and they don't, they may know if they understand Facebook advertising, but that's how it works. That's the reality of it. And the reason they're seeing your ads is because they fall into the demographic. They fall into certain, because you can put rules there as well. You might have their email address in your audience, in your custom audience, but if you're saying that you only want them between this age and they're older or younger, then they're not going to see those ads. But the idea is that you want to hit them with different ads that you think might appeal to them. So if that person has inquired to you about their child learning guitar and their daughter or whatever, then maybe you want to put an ad in front of them which is about children learning guitar, which sends them to a web page of children learning guitar. So it's all focused on that target audience rather than just general ads about learning guitar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Good idea.
Yeah. You've got to have at least 100, just so you know, you've got to have at least 100 email addresses that are on Facebook for these to work. And in all respects, you probably need a few hundred to be effective, for the time and energy to set up a Facebook campaign there, you need a few. But it's
based on audience.
Yeah, just you need the numbers, because if you don't have enough numbers, it's like standing in a back lane, with your flyer saying, hey, you want to learn guitar, opposed to standing on a main street. And that's what you're looking for, is you're trying to get in front of a lot of people, but a lot of the right people through. And if they're people who've sent you an email and they've inquired, then they're the right person. Because a lot of the time when they don't enroll or they don't respond to your emails, it's not because they're not interested. Sometimes it's just because they're busy, or they read your first email and they didn't quite hit them. So the second email they're not looking at. So that can happen sometimes where for whatever reason, I know it happens to me where I went to a seminar last week, and one of the ladies, great presenter, and she said, put your email address on this form if you want to get a follow-up from me and some more information, free information. So I filled it in, and but now I'm trying to work through all the notes that I had last week because I got catching up from last week. So I kind of just put her into the too hard basket at the moment. So it'd be easy for her to think, oh, why isn't he responding? He was interested last week. Well, it's just that it's not a high priority for me right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but if she takes my email address, which I'm sure she will, because she's a smart lady, and puts me on her Facebook marketing, then chances are I will see some of her ads in the future. And it could be a year from now, and she puts on some seminar and charges $1,000, and I'll go, oh, that's a woman, I know her. Oh, wow, that's exactly what I want to learn. Bang, sign me up. So that's what happens with marketing. And the more, in this game, the more qualified leads you have, the more the better. They're valuable. That's the value. They talk about the value in the list, but it's not just the size of your list, it's the quality of your list. So if your list is built of people who actually do have an interest in learning guitar, and let's say that you have a list of 1,000 people at some point in your area who have all showed some interest in learning guitar, you may not know right now what you're going to do for those people, but in a year or 2 years, you might have a workshop for those people, or you might have some touring guitarist who is, famous coming into town to do a masterclass. You don't know what you've got coming, and that's why collect their email addresses and decide later what you're going to do with them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good.
Yeah. Every email address is valuable. That's how I look at it. Every contact is valuable.
Yep.
Okay. So cool. Any other questions, Ben, before I go on to the cash flow topic?
No, I think that's good, and definitely interested in the cash flow topic.
Okay, excellent. All right, so this is one where it's one that a lot of people don't give a lot of consideration for. So if you think about someone like Robert Kiyosaki, who's Rich Dad Poor Dad, he's really the master of this, and really sums it up nicely. So I'm going to more or less quote some of his ideas and his from his books, but at the same time I'm going to give you a little bit of my own take on it and how it's worked for me and continuing to working for me, and how I'm using it as my sort of blueprint. So in normal cases, the way that we think about income is that we think, if I've got, let's say you got a bank account, and in your bank account you've got $20,000, and you think, well, I'm worth $20,000. But what we fail sometimes to look at is what the value of our business is. And in the case of, and this is why a business is much more valuable than a job. A job still has value if you have some kind of guarantee. If you know you're going to be in that job for however long, you've got the value of that income coming through. And let's look at it from in the terms of a bank, right? A bank, someone who's earning, whatever it is, $100,000 a year, if they go to a bank and want to borrow money, the bank will lend them, 5 or 10 times that money. They'll say, here's $500,000, go and buy a house. And what the bank knows is two things. One is the house is worth a certain value. So if the person defaults on the loan, they can take the house and that'll cover the loan. So they're not in danger. But the other thing is the bank looks at their future income and says, well, this is what you're worth. If you've got a job, depending on the job, they would categorize the job. And they would say, well, this guy is a doctor. There's no shortage or potential concern about doctors being out of jobs anytime soon. This guy will probably be, earning his $150,000 a year for the next 20 years. So bang, we'll give you $1 million loan. Off you go. And that's why you'll see doctors living in $1 million homes with, brand new Mercedes Benzes, even though there's an entrepreneur down the road who's got his own restaurant and can't borrow anywhere near that money because the bank looks at that person very differently. They don't see them as having this guaranteed future. They see them as having a very risky business. So what the bank sees, and they're obviously looking for safe investments, but they're looking at cash flow. They're looking at what can this person afford to pay, therefore we can lend them. And if you can look at yourself like a bank in the same respect, look at your own business, then you'll see the potential and you'll see why banks are such profitable organizations and how they became so rich. And so right now, just an example, I'm not going to ask you for any of your numbers, but just as a kind of an example, if you had a school with 100 students coming through, and those students each spent, let's say, $1,000 a year, just to keep the numbers round, that means that you've got a business that's bringing in $100,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And if you then looked at your business and thought, okay, what are my expenses? And you had a look at your expenses, and your expenses were $40,000 a year. Therefore, you've got a business that's profiting $60,000 a year. What we tend to do, what most people do when they're in business, they come out of jobs, is they have this job mentality, and they look at their business and go, okay, well, I make $60,000 a year. I've got to pay my rent, I've got to pay for my food or whatever, and then I end up with about $20,000 a week in savings. So I'll try and save as much as I can. They get to the end of the year, they use the $20,000 to go on a holiday. And so they don't make any money or save any money. And that's how they look at their business. But if you look at the business from a cash flow point of view, what happens is that if you've got a business that's bringing in $100,000 a year, and even if you've got those $40,000 in expenses, and we bring it down to $60,000, there's a business that has a cash flow of $60,000, which means that if you took out a loan against that any kind of loan, and then use that $60,000 to pay that loan, then whatever you would use the money of that loan for as an investment then creates more income for you. So hopefully I won't confuse things here too much, but what happens is that I'll take that $60,000
yep.
of extra income after my expenses coming in from my business, and I'll use it to pay the loan repayments on a $600,000 loan. Okay, because generally it's about 10 times. It's not that the bank will give you that money, unfortunately, but I just want you to get into the terms of how it works. So all a loan requires is that you're paying the minimum payment each month. That's all it requires, and that's why you'll find that most wealthy people don't actually own most of what most of it's borrowed. They borrow large amounts of money. When you see a project go up, like a new apartment building or something like that, the money is always borrowed. Not always, but nearly always borrowed. They very rarely do they walk up with cash and just pay for it. But what happens is that if they go and borrow that $600,000, knowing that they can pay the repayments with their $60,000 a year, then they put that $600,000 into, say, building a block of apartments, and then that block of apartments brings them in $100,000 a year, or even less, say $50,000 a year. Now what they've got is their $60,000 a year is paying for their loan, and then they've got the income of that investment bringing in another $50,000. So they've actually got $110,000, but they need $60,000 to pay off the loan repayments. But what that does is then creates more leverage for them. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you mean by leverage?
Leverage is so as they're paying off the loan on the let's say they bought the apartment block for $600,000. As they're paying off that loan each year, $6,000, then the equity in that is increasing, their own equity, and then they're able to borrow more. So in other words, leverage more. And it's not, so let's say they own $100,000 of that. What that means is that it doesn't mean that they just have $100,000. It means that they can borrow against that $100,000, which is usually in multiples. So it's like 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 times a multiple of that. And as you start to build up a history with a bank or a borrowing institution or as an investor, then more people will come to you with money. And that's why banks will give certain individuals billions of dollars to play with, but the guy who's in the job and trying to get a loan for a house can't even get a $100,000 loan. You struggle. It's because that person doesn't have a history. The bank knows very little about you, and so that's why they're not going to bet big on you. They're only going to bet small. So as you gain more equity, so to speak, you gain more leverage, and your business, when you view your business from a cash flow point of view, not just a profit point of view, you want it to be profitable, by the way, but just for the sake of this discussion, that when you view it more from a cash flow point of view, then what you start to see is the way that you can do more with your money faster. So let's use an example. Let's sort of look at your business, right? If you go out and do 10,000 flyers, and let's say you get 10 students out of that, and out of those 10 students, you keep half of them. Let's say the other half disappear, and you're saying 70%, but let's just say 50% of them stay for a year. And so that those 10,000 flyers bring you in a cash flow of $5,000 a year. So if you know that for every 10,000 flyers you do, you're going to increase your cash flow by $5,000, can you see it makes sense to spend, to pay someone, we've talked about this in terms of the flyers, but to bring someone on board to help you do the flyers so you can get those 10,000 out faster, even build a team so you can get them out. And that way you've got that investment of let's say it costs to deliver 10,000 flyers. Let's do the numbers on it. This will be the easiest way. So hang on one second. Okay, so So we're going to say that it takes 5 hours to do 1,000 flyers. Right, so you've got 50 hours there, and if you're going to pay someone, what are we going to pay them? $20 an hour, $25 an hour?
20 at the most. Yeah, say 20.
Okay, cool. $20 an hour. So it's going to cost you $1,000 to deliver 10,000 flyers and to get those 5 students who will bring in $5,000. So for an investment of $1,000, you can get a return of $5,000. Now, here's the thing, is you're not going to get your $1,000. You're going to pay out $1,000, but you're not going to get your $5,000 straight away. Let's say it takes a bit of time, right? It's going to take, because it's an average, to get your full $5,000, it will probably take you a couple of years to get all that money back. But you will get your $1,000 in your first year, maybe less, maybe in the first couple of months you'll get your, because most of what happens is that you do your 10,000 flyers and 10 people sign up and pay $99 each. There's $1,000. You've got your $1,000 back already if you can get 10 signups. But to get your $5,000, obviously, is going to take longer. But if we look at it from this point of view, and this is how the cash flow investor looks at things, is that they say, all right, so if I go and borrow $1,000 from the bank, what am I going to pay per month on that? What's the repayments going to be? And obviously it depends on how long you take the loan over, but let's take it over 5 years, just $1,000 over 5 years. And that means that you would end up paying, about 50% in interest over a 5-year period. So you're going to end up paying back $1,500 over that time. $1,500 divided by, 60 months is $25 a month. Hang on a sec. Okay, so yeah, so you're paying $25 a month. So if I said to you for $25 a month, I could increase your student numbers by 10. Would that be a good deal?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So that's what I'm not offering any deal here. I'm just putting it in.
I'm ready.
So the idea, and really I'm just telling you to think about it in those terms. So you can see now, because this is the difference with the business that that one of the things that I've read this several times, that the power is in the information, in the knowledge. The people who win on the share market are the people who know the companies, who know how to read their profit and loss statements, their company statements, their financial records. They know how to read all that stuff, and they know the information behind the company. So they're the ones who tend to do well when they come to make investments, because they know what they're looking at, and they have the information. In this business, there's no better place for me and you to be investing other than in the business we're in, because we know this business. We know what the numbers are. So rather than going and I see it all the time where guys go and bet on things that they know nothing about, like they go and buy shares in something, or invest in businesses that somebody else suggested to them because they said this is the next big thing, not knowing anything about it. Even people who invest in real estate, a lot of people don't realize that most people who invest in real estate do not make much money, and most of them lose. And that's because you look at the 2008 debacle, how many people lost their homes and lost their investments, lost thousands of dollars. These are because people didn't know and understand real estate, and they didn't set themselves up. The people who didn't suffer are those who understood how real estate works, and even when 2008 hit, a lot of them capitalized on it, or they were protected against it somehow. They made sure that they weren't in a situation where they were going to lose. So coming back to the cash flow situation, is that if you now know that for $25 a month, you can increase your students by 10 at any time, then that's something to really consider. And because it's not, we think of the cost of being $1,000 in flyers to get someone to deliver flyers, but what investors think about is not the cost there and then. They look at the cost spread over time and the interest that they're paying on that money. So they don't think of the money as theirs. They don't think of the $1,000 as theirs. They think of what they're doing is they're borrowing $1,000 and then they're paying interest. So they take the money that they get as a return on their investment, take it away from the actual cost of the loan, and then work out the ROI on it. Am I making sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'll come back to the fact that what most people do is that they treat things like a job. They keep looking, and this is the difference between the millionaire mindset and the average person mindset, the working class mindset, if you like. I'm working class, guys, so I've got nothing against working class. It's just that the mindset that we're brought up with, that I was brought up with, is that you work, you get paid, and you pay your bills. That's it. End of story. So this mindset of borrowing money, and as Kiyosaki talks about, good debt and bad debt, it took me quite a while to get my head around it. And I still have to fight my instincts on this. My instinct is not to borrow money, not to spend any more money than I'm earning, whether it's good or bad. The idea is I can't afford this, but that's not the mindset of millionaire investors. They have a very different way of seeing things. So my question would be like this, Ben, if you were given $10,000 to invest in your business, what would you do with it?
Obviously just in, you put it into the places where you're going to get the biggest return on interest, so your marketing. Your marketing is one, and marketing, is definitely the answer. But with marketing, what we have to understand is everything is marketing. So from the way your place looks to, you know what I mean? The clothes you wear, the t-shirt, the car, the folders the students get, it's all part of the marketing package. And so if you were to get $10,000, and this is a question I've been throwing at a few of the guys, what would you do with that $10,000? That's where you want to really drill down and answer that question, because once you know what you would do with $10,000 and how you're going to get a good return and a quick return on your $10,000, that's when you'll be confident in borrowing the money or coming up with the money, because you know you're going to get it back. You just have to have that mindset, rather than saying, well, I don't have $10,000, so I'm not even going to think about it. What I want you to do is actually think about it. Think about what you would do if someone said, here's $10,000, what are you going to do with it? So. Yeah, I guess, and I definitely have been thinking about that, and it's obviously you put most of it where the safe bet is with increasing your output of flyers, and just in this where you've got recorded statistics of getting in certain areas like Facebook or Google Ads, Yeah, but then you sort of fight the idea of, oh, what if I put a full page ad in the main newspaper, and that, which is going to cost me, could possibly blow half that budget. It's kind of could be a high risk as well. Yeah. So you certainly always sort of fighting those, looking for that quick answer, or the shortcuts as well.
Yeah. Yep, and sometimes they pay off. They do. Sometimes they do pay off.
Mm. It's hard to find, I guess. Think about the balance between high risk, low risk.
Yeah, and there's some forms of marketing that take time and consistency. Like you might have to run that full page ad every day or every week for a month or 2 months just to see it work. So sometimes you got to, and this is where research, again, information, and that's what I was saying before about the power of information. And our network is looking around the network and going, okay, guys, what's working for you guys? So you even though you may spend a little bit of your budget to take some risk, which I would put a little bit of that. I would say risk 20%. That's how I work on 20%. I'm going to throw into risky ventures and see what happens. The 80%, I'm going with what I know works. I'm not going to risk this 80%, and that way I've always got the balance there. And if you don't do the 20%, you never know. You'll just keep plodding along doing the safe way. So yeah. I would. So here's some other ideas just to sort of wrap up on this, but the idea is to take that $10,000 idea, because that later can become a $100,000 idea or $1 million idea, and that's how businesses build. You've got to build on things that solid platforms. So we don't want to be building a business on shaky platforms, big risks where we put everything on the red and hope it wins. We've got to know where our best, safest bets are first, put it on there, and then take some risk over here. But in the case of where I went and looked at some of the studios in Sydney last week, I could see it wasn't, some of it wasn't, and I understand their position, so this is not a criticism of them, because everybody has financial constraints. But for example, if you're renting a premise that's costing you, say, $500 a week, that works out to be, $20-something thousand a year, then you've got a $20,000 to $30,000 investment sitting there, and to not spend $1,000 on making it look good, it just doesn't make sense. You understand what I'm saying? It's you've wasted your big investment. And so this is what I said I've seen in some of the locations, is that there's this kind of hesitation, and like I said, I understand that there are financial constraints, but sometimes you've got to do it. You've got to go to the bank, you've got to find the money, and you've got to say, okay, I've got to spend $1,000 on getting this place right, because if I lose just one student, or I get one student from the changes that I make, then the money's well spent. And it's not even that, it's the fact that when you go and borrow the money, again, we come back to those interest payments. Even if you borrowed it over 5 years, it's only $25 a week. Just stop drinking the coffee, and there's your renovations. And that's really what it's about. We've just got to get into that mentality of understanding that it's okay to borrow money for things that you can feel pretty confident about. I'm not suggesting go and borrow money and throw it on the red, but everyone should look at the investment, and look at the investment that you've already got, and whether or not you're doing it justice. So if you're sitting on an investment, which is a rental property, and you're spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year on that property to rent it, to not spend a couple of $1,000s each year on making it look good and improving it is really, you're doing yourself a major disservice, and you're throwing money away, basically. One more thing is just the kind of things that you can do to your business to make it more sort of appealing, is to remember that your students who are coming in there that you're marketing to them all the time as well. So it's not just about having signs out the front and making the place look good. It's got to be when they come in that they get the experience, that they get the feeling that this is a place they want to keep coming back each week, that it's comfortable. And that's why, you know, a lot of restaurants do well, you know, you kind of Starbucks places, all this. People don't go there just for the food or the coffee. They go there because they like the atmosphere, they like the service. It's the whole thing, and that's what a good restaurant understands. And it's the same really with any good business, is people have to come into it and feel that it's something that they want to be.
Yeah, it's certainly a balance between it being, you know, my premises is well, it's kind of like an ex-doctor's surgery, so but unfortunately the paint job they did in there, it's got a little bit of pink in it as well, so that's not the best thing as well, but it has kind of got a little bit of a sterile atmosphere to it. But I've got, you know, got the posters, you know, so information posters that you put together. I've got them all along the wall for information. There's a balance between it being like uniform, as we sort of recommend, and being something that's exciting and cool as well.
Yeah. I think about the way that I kind of thought about it was that priority one is the place should be neat and tidy. So because sometimes you can't, if you've got no money, there's no excuse for keeping it untidy or unclean. So definitely clean and tidy, because the first thing that'll knock out students, there's always that percentage of students on the top who will go, this place is untidy, it's disorganized, it's dirty, I don't want to come here. And that's the only reason they don't want to come. So then the next level down that is what I call consistency, and that's having, you know, pieces of furniture that match. Because again, if you have this kind of mismatch of furniture, mismatch of colors and all that sort of thing, then people get the feeling that you're disorganized. It's just a subconscious message that these guys aren't organized. You know, you understand that, and as most musicians do. You're a stage performer, Ben, and you know that, you know, looking right on stage, and you know, the guys all looking right, and you know, the colors and the lights and the layout, all that matters to the audience. It's not just the music.
Yeah, I always say that good lighting makes you sound better.
Exactly, that's it. And you know, there's nothing like, you know, dressing well, you know, on stage, because it elevates you. It makes people look at you as if, okay, you guys are, you know, you're up there, you rock, you're performers, you're stars. If you just look like you belong in the crowd, then they're not going to really look your way, or they don't, you know, they're not as inclined to look your way. So it's the same within your studio. Again, you want to look good, you want to present well, and do whatever you can to get that consistency factor, so that things like having the same chairs, having this, you know, if you're using the music stands, have the music stands so they're not broken and not odd, not using different kind of music stands. And this is what I have seen, is this inconsistency, and it really does. It sends that message that if your studio is inconsistent, your teaching probably is too. So yeah. Yeah, and beyond that, it's really a case of adding the touches. So things are, I think that the waiting area is important, and having a comfortable waiting area, you know, and then with your teaching room, or where at least where your students are facing the wall behind you, should be fairly plain. You know, the idea is that we want to sort of transition across to those screens, but there should just be one screen, because you don't want students distracted. You don't want lots of things, you know, posters and things in their view. You just want one thing, like a screen there, that they can look at and have their attention on that, or on you. If there are posters and atmosphere in the room, you can put those behind them, but not in front of their eyes. That's how I operated anyway, and it worked well. The waiting area, it needs to be a place where they come in and feel comfortable, that it's nice to wait in there. It smells right, it feels right, the colors are right, there's some inspiring posters, even a TV that's playing some cool videos or whatever. So yeah, so the $10,000 question, you can think about that this week and see how you can spend $10,000. Okay, cool. Any last questions, comments, Ben?
You know, I guess yeah, keeping goals in focus, you know, and working towards them is always difficult to keep on track. And,
Yeah. Keeping the momentum as well, and
yeah, you just feel sometimes you get to a certain number of students and it's just really hard to pull through on certain. You just get stuck. You seem to get into ruts on certain figures and that sort of thing, and then you know, just pushing through those boundaries as well.
And you kind of got to think also, you know, this is where I come back to that cash flow and that investment paradigm, is that you can use this to open more locations, and I think that sometimes you just got to do it. And I know you've already got 2 locations, but your main location is Wollongong. But once you start to sort of, you know, get that momentum going, it doesn't actually get any harder. We think it does. We have this sort of imagination that we're going to have more and more problems. But what happens is you come up with the solutions faster, and there's just this, you know, way of sort of moving and transitioning. You know, I remember going from teaching in one room myself to having, you know, 5 schools, and, you know, the second school was almost impulsive. Whereas it's like, well, you know, the first one's going well, let's just go and open a second one because it's available. There's a studio in the next suburb. So it did that, and that went well because it was feeding off the first one. And then the third one came pretty quickly after that, and yeah, within 2 years it had the 5 schools, and it was like, okay, what's the next step? And that's when the network you know, idea came out of that. But having the support of G4, having already the structure in place, your first location is the hard one. That's the hard one to build. The second one is a lot easier because you've learned from the previous one. So, and which you've already had some of that experience. You already understand that. So sometimes you just got to get that momentum going and get you know, decide where you're going with it, and just have that vision. Be very clear about your vision. Say, okay, well, how many schools do I want? If each school makes me, you know, whatever amount of dollars a year, how many do I need to reach my target? And that's really, and once you see that, you can start to plant the seeds. You don't have to wait for every, you know, tree to fruit before you plant the next seed. You can get them going, get the momentum going.
Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge for me, obviously, because I still have an additional income to help compensate, you know, is making that transition as well. And, you know, as I said at the beginning, I'm still working essentially 7 days a week, trying to, you know, between the team and performing and making that transition. And that's what my goal is, to make that transition for not performing as much, you know, maybe once a month or something, but where it's just difficult to keep on track and not to, as this business becomes more profitable, not to sort of become complacent to that, or start to use that for your own income. Yeah, it's certainly a fine balancing act.
Yeah, and you've really got to keep writing yourself out of the script, if you've heard that term before. You've got to keep looking at ways, you know, how are you spending your time? I know with your band and your performance, you are the star, so you've got to be on stage and be in that role. But even around that, everything leading up to that, and you know, with your band, but also, you know, well, more importantly with your school, is that you've got to look at, okay, what do I do this week, or what do I do right now that I'm going to actually create something that will write me out of that role? So I'm no longer doing this job or doing that job. So you want to end up doing the most vital jobs for your business that you need to do, that you know, the ones that need to be handed over at the end, the last to go. So you don't want to be handing over the really important role, like maybe right now it's selling, it's in the enrollment stage. So you don't want to hand that over. And so, but your groups, that's something that you might look at, you know, handing over soon. Things like just the general admin of your premise. You know, you've already handed over, you know, some of your marketing to me, which is great. That's part of it. You know, so G4, that's what G4 is all about, is being able to come up with those systems. And you can throw them at me as well. You can sort of say, well, how do I get out of doing this? And I can say, well, we'll work out a system for it, because you're not alone here. We're doing this together. I want you to get to that point as quickly as possible. So yeah, so you may not have the answer, but if you know how you spend your time. So if you can send me, how you spend your time, and then we can work together on creating systems. I've already spoken about FileMaker, which is where we're going to have the database, and that should, make your job a lot easier, and make it easier for somebody else to operate your administration, at least.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. So when that's not live yet, though, is it? So
no, it won't be available till early next year. Yeah, mostly because it has to be set up on a server, and I've still got work to do on it and the final touches to it. But I will go to Japan in January, and then I have to set up a fixed computer there where it'll be on a server to run it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've already started. Well, I've had someone helping me flyers for quite a while now, and I've been spending additional money on that, and also been trying to train the same person training up as a teacher. But I've had some hiccups with that now. I'm probably going to have to let them go, but it's been a really valuable learning curve, and I think that's obviously another hangout is talking about all that stuff. But I'm fully aware of delegating and creating a team and that sort of thing. I've written as one of my goals to be able to hand off. Majority of my time is out there doing flyers when I could be doing other stuff to generate more income for the business. So that's something that's holding me back at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, you want a flyer manager. You want one person who you can rely on to do the flyers. And
find that right person. That's all.
Yeah, it's a hard one, and even setting up systems in place where you do, to me it makes more sense to go out for you until you find that person, and you'll know that person when you find them. But for you to go out, say 2 hours a week, that's it, just 2 hours, but hire 5 people to go with you, and that way you're going to get 10 hours or 12 hours worth of flyers done in 2 hours. And the idea is that you're out there with them, so you can watch them, you can manage them, make sure it gets done, and that they're on the job. And you just set up it so that you're in the car driving around from different point to point to make sure that they're doing the job. And that way, eventually you get someone else to step into that role. Whoever out of those 5 people works out to be the best, most reliable person, you pay them more and make them the flyer manager. So yeah.
Never looked at it like that.
What's that? Sorry?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it to me it's and honestly I didn't do it. I wish I had have. It came later, but it's the.
I don't know. We find someone who wants to work 2 hours a week though.
There are plenty of
or even 4 hours, even 4 to 5 hours a week.
Yeah, there are plenty of you could do more hours. You could certainly extend the hours, but there are like I said, plenty of mothers and even some young kids after school that might do it. So there are options out there. But you just gotta find it.
About it. Yep.
Yeah. So and it's also a case of you're just trying to find the right person who can be the manager of those people anyway. So you're just wanting to you might go through 50 people right before you find that person, but it's just you just bring them through and go, all right, I go out once a week and you trial them. You just say, look, you can come out with me, and it can be almost like a one-off contract thing, where you bring them in, they just come with you for 1 week, go out and do the 2 hours, and you pay them cash in hand and see you later. But when you find that person or people who you feel are reliable, or you can just say, look, hey, would you like to do it again next week? Because I'm looking for more people to do it next week. So do it. You know how bands come to town and they hire a bunch of people for the day, just to help out with the band. That's the same thing. So it's not a permanent job; it's just a casual. And there are plenty of people out there who would happily just jump on for a bit of cash.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's good. That's giving me some ideas.
better wrap it up there, Ben. So yeah, good speaking to you.
Yeah,
My pleasure. All right. See ya. Bye.